Your talk shop time 8:05 this morning, and a happy anniversary, happy birthday to our United States Marine Corps, 250 years strong today in history. Brett Glass this morning on the talk shop with the weekly City of Laramie agenda preview. Brett?
Good morning, Eric, and good morning, Laramie. This is your preview of the agenda for the City Council work session this week, which will be held in the City Council chambers at 406 Ivinson Avenue on Wednesday, November 12th, 2025. Not Tuesday, because Tuesday obviously is a holiday, so it will happen on Wednesday at 6 o'clock p.m. And this will be a work session, so council won't be able to vote on any items, but they're going to hear presentations, and they have one very important presentation to hear. After they have a public comment period where they take public comments on non-agenda items, things they're not otherwise going to be discussing. If you want to, you can go and bend their ear for 3 minutes on any topic not related to the work session. They will launch into the work session in which they will consider revisions to the Storm Surface Water Utility Ordinance, Laramie Municipal Code 13.80. And, well, this has created a lot of controversy here in Laramie because the city has gone ahead and imposed a significant tax on property owners in Laramie. And this is going to discuss implementation of it, possible changes to it. So anyway, there is a PDF which I recommend that interested members of the public look at online. You can find it if you go to cityoflaramie.org/agenda center, then scroll down to the entry for the City Council work session this week. And if you click on, there's a little drop-down menu, and if you click on download HTML, you will get to a web page which shows the agenda and which shows the handouts. And what you need to do is find the presentation, which is going to be made by staff. It is a PDF file which has some slides in it, and you can see the slides which are going to be presented at the meeting. And the agenda for the presentation is as follows. They're going to talk about the operational and capital impacts of capping the tax which is charged to property owners, the impact on affordable housing, which I'll get to in a minute. This is sort of interesting. Ordinance changes recommended by staff, and then council will discuss but not vote on what changes they might want to make to the surface water drainage program. So anyway, first they're going to discuss what happens if they cap the rates that they charge everyone. The rates are assessed against your property like any other tax based on your property's characteristics, in this case the amount of what they call impermeable surface area. And they're talking about capping the total amount. They're not talking about changing the rate per square foot, which is kind of interesting because many people who wouldn't be capped by their proposed caps are saying that they think that their rates are too high. None of them would see a reduction because they're not lowering the rate per square foot. They're only putting a cap on the highest end users or of this supposed service. And as a result, most of the city of Laramie, most property owners in Laramie would not see any reduction. They're talking about capping the fees at either $100 for businesses and $30 for residences, or $200 for businesses and $30 for residences. They're not talking again about lowering the rates, and this is a concern because, again, this shifts burdens onto people who have smaller properties. It relieves only the people with the most valuable properties, and therefore it people will question, and I think council should question whether that's really fair. But they've talked about those two scenarios tonight in the handout, and they're talking about how much it would decrease their revenues. And each of those caps, it really actually doesn't make that much difference, would decrease the revenues between $1 million and $1.5 million a year from the tax. And this would affect the operational expenses and budget for the city. But it's not really clear from the brochure or from the slides exactly what it would do. The city was already planning to hire 5 additional staff members, 4 of them just to operate street cleaners, and 1 full-time engineering person. And it's not clear how that would be affected. It doesn't look, at least from the slides, as if the city is planning to cut the increase in staff at all. And that's a concern because, well, that's the most expensive part of any kind of program, the ongoing expense of having more employees. We're talking millions of dollars here in salaries. One thing which I hope council will ask is what would happen if we had fewer employees rather than adding all those new ones. But that's not in the cards. It's not part of the proposal. They're also talking about the capital impacts, how long-term projects would be affected. And what they're talking about is having, if they cap things, having fewer capital projects unless they can get grants for them, but continuing with the most important ones, such as continued pipelining and things like that. That's perfectly, that's what the city should be doing. If the costs are excessive, it ought to slow down. We can get all of this done. It just might take longer. But we should concentrate on the most seriously impacted areas. And and stay within our budget. Just like a family has to stay within its budget. The city should as well. Now, there's also a chart in the slides about the impact on governmental entities that supposedly would be paying in to the fund. And it talks about how much less they would be paying per month. The university gets the biggest break. Instead of paying $33,000 a month, it pays, depending on the cap, $2,000 to $4,000 a month. A tremendous reduction for the university. Would this placate them and cause them to drop their lawsuit against the city, claiming that the ordinance is illegal? Probably not. They're probably going to go ahead with their ordinance, and so I don't think it would do much good to cap the university, the largest entity here.
Win the battle, win the war.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think that's going to do much. Then they're also talking about the impact on the impact on Albany County's contribution. The current rate for Albany County is to pay between $4,000 and $5,000 a month, and this would reduce dramatically what they paid. They would pay $435 with a $100 cap and $645 with a $200 cap. So basically, it would reduce it by 90%, or maybe a little bit less. But certainly a large reduction. The question is, if the city does do this, will the county even pay this? Does the city have the right to tax the county? There are some real questions here. And then there is a line in the chart for the state and YDOT. Apparently, they would bill the state and YDOT $6,720 per month for this tax. And with the caps, it would be reduced to between $400 and $800 a month. So again, a tremendous reduction. But will they pay it at all? It's not clear what the county commissioners think about this and whether they would pay it all. Similarly, the school district. Current rate, it says $8,500 roughly per month. And the school district with a $100 cap would pay about $1,200, $1,300 per month. With a $200 cap per property, would pay about $2,400 per month. Yes, a significant reduction. But again, do we have the right to bill the school district for this tax? And so there's a lot of questions here about whether any of the lines in this chart mean anything, because it's not clear that, again, any of these entities are actually subject to the tax, especially without an election. The next chart is kind of unusual. It talks about the reduced impact with caps on affordable housing, but they say that there are only 81 parcels that they consider to be affordable housing. Why so few? Well, because they're only talking about tax-subsidized affordable housing, not the rest of us, not housing which is affordable because it's privately owned, doesn't get any subsidy for the government, but just manages to make things affordable by doing the right things. And so there is definitely some question here about whether this chart means much, because the majority of tenants in Laramie don't live in those 81 properties, and will still be impacted by the tax in one way or another. I'd like to see a chart which talks about that, about whether multifamily properties, especially ones multiple stories, which do other things to make housing affordable, how those would be impacted. But that is not in the presentation for Wednesday night. Now, next there's a slide which talks about staff's recommended changes to the ordinance. One of them has to do with billing condominiums. They mention that in condominiums, parcels may not be billed for property taxes and therefore not be billed by the city as the owner, as the owner, because it may be that an association gets billed. And so this is a minor change. This talks about how the city would bill it. But this really shouldn't be relevant because the state law says that the city shouldn't be billing for this tax anyway. State law in Title 16 specifically states that the taxing authority ought to be collecting the tax, and therefore it's really the county assessor's problem. But the city is proceeding as if this law didn't exist at all, and that it would be directly billing for the tax. So this is a little bit of concern because it shows that the city is going ahead with its plan not to follow the law. Then the staff is recommending that there be caps by billing unit rather than a reduction in the cost per billing unit, and they're proposing to cap the number of billing units that you can have. Rather than capping the dollar amount. Apparently that's just a computer thing that just makes it easier for them to figure out how to do the caps. And then, and this is an item which is going to concern some folks, they're proposing to remove the credit program. In other words, if you do something to abate stormwater, can you get credit for that? The staff is recommending that no matter what you do, you still have to pay. And this is a concern because, well, if you put money into stormwater abatement, you probably should get some credit for doing that because you're taking on some of the city's burden. But the staff is recommending that this credit be removed. And then there's a discussion of ordinance changes and next steps, and essentially, if the ordinance is not repealed or revised in other ways, what council will do. Absent from this entire discussion is one key thing, which is following the law and having an election to approve whatever they propose. Nowhere in this entire document does it talk about following the law, the obvious plain state law that you don't need to be a lawyer to interpret, which says that whatever they do, there ought to be an election. They don't talk about, as I mentioned earlier, billing through the county the way the state law says that they're supposed to. And they don't talk about any changes to what they consider impermeable or the rate at which they bill square footage. So this is sure to be commented on by the public, and I think the public should chime in because the staff does not appear to be considering a lot of the things that the public asked for when we had some of the earlier meetings, and we had a big town hall meeting and people complained. So anyway, if you are more interested in this, please look over the presentation on the city's website. Again, cityoflaramie.org/agenda center, and comment, because your council needs your input. If it doesn't get your input, it's probably just going to rubber stamp whatever the staff tells it to do, and that may or may not be what the public wants. So that's pretty much our presentation for today. We'll see what happens on Wednesday night. And, everyone have a good Veterans Day, and back to you, Eric.
This segment brought to you in the public interest by Chano's Village, 513 Boswell Drive in Laramie, and H&R Block, along with Perkins Restaurant and Bakery.